And away we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in. The Rob Brown Show is on your radio. This is the Fan Upstate. Howdy, y'all. Happy Tuesday. Good morning. How we doing? Everybody good as we prepare to down an audio dosage of caffeine. Great to have you along for the ride. I am Rob Brown, back in the network studio, the executive producer, the co-host, the alpha and the omega of the Fan Upstate, the sultan of swag, the professor of perfection, the wizard of wave. They call him the great one. Lonzo's here as well. What up, Zoe?
It's getting hot in here. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about the rest because that may happen and you get to see it live on Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. So, you know, on the Skins game here pretty soon.
I was literally about to say, I don't necessarily know that we want to go shirts and skins on the radio broadcast. But if we do, I am sure the streaming numbers will just absolutely explode. What you told me once, and I'd rather you say it, you had a nickname for yourself back in the day on your old station. Would you like to remind the people what it is?
Well, it's still my same station, but yeah, I mean, I'm still over there, by the way. It's the Fat Fabio. I lost that for a while, but I put a little back on. I'm not Fat Fabio level yet, and hopefully I won't get there. But, you know, sitting in a room like this, I'll take care of some problems that I've accrued lately.
Fat Fabio is one of the greatest nicknames. I usually am anti self-assigned nicknames, but that one, I think that one elevates itself into more than acceptability. In fact, a full sale endorsement.
That was my rap name. So, you know,
I love it.
It's okay to come up with your own rap name. Now, a nickname is different. That was my rap name. So
busy day on the show today, ladies and gentlemen, and we are going to, very much against what we traditionally do here, immediately jump into sports talk. We are going to immediately jump in to the news of the day. And my question here for you guys that we will discuss throughout the show, what are you shaking your head about, Lonzo?
Because if you're starting the show with what I thought you would start the show with, and which Hudson has already mentioned, no,
I am shocking to none of you not beginning the show with a discussion about Carson Wentz, okay?
Listen, can we just not have a discussion about that at all? I guess we have to address it eventually. But,
we have to address it eventually, but I will.
This is what you want, so
I will go ahead and I will put Lonzo's apprehension to bed right out of the gate. Rob Brown is not going to call for Carson Wentz to be a target of the Carolina Panthers, okay? I will go and say this, Lonzo. Of the vet quarterbacks that we have mentioned, and I have mentioned multiple times that I am in favor of going with a veteran quarterback for the Panthers and saving to grab the QB of the future in the future. If my options are Carson Wentz or trade the farm to get the number one overall, Lonzo, I might trade every draft pick in this class to get CJ or Bryce if that's what it took.
Glad you see it my way.
Only for this one.
Only for Carson Wentz. There's some other ones.
I would take Jimmy G. I would take Aaron Rodgers. I would take Derek Carr. I would take Lamar Jackson. But Carson Wentz is absolutely not a target for the Carolina Panthers if I am in charge, ladies and gentlemen. It's just not how it's going to go. So we will get to our Carson Wentz discussion later on in the radio broadcast. But instead, I wanted to open up with this. And I am going to, by some of my peers and colleagues, be accused of being late to this particular party. And I will tell you that I had a conversation on Friday night, I think, maybe Saturday morning. I don't remember. It's all a blur. But I had a conversation with somebody about my job, my career, and this industry as a whole. There was a manager, I guess that's the best word to use, but there was a manager of a very popular and wildly successful, yet controversial sports talk podcast network that it was Barstool. There was a manager of Barstool. Let me just throw it out there.
I was going to say, I got that. I was playing it off for the cameras, but
that's fair. That's fine.
But you could see me play it off on the cameras.
By watching the stream at facebook.com/thefanupstate, twitter.com/thefanupstate, or searching and subscribing to The Fan Upstate on YouTube, or searching and subscribing to The Rob Brown Show on Twitch, all available to you at this exact and very moment. Steven says, Rob, what does your shirt say? This is our throwback shirt to the old Spartanburger days. The shirt reads, beef, beer, bat flips, and baseball. It is the greatest slogan of any professional baseball team that I have ever had the pleasure of working for. And despite the now non-existence of the Spartanburgers, a team for which, and Lonzo can confirm, I threw out an absolute rocket of an honorary first pitch for them back in the day. I still routinely break out the Spartanburgers gear because it only feels appropriate.
Keegan caught that ball, and I'm pretty sure that he had to take the glove off and shake the hand a little.
Hey, man, it was smoke. It was absolute smoke. So let me get to the question that I was driving at here. Last Friday, Graham Neff, the athletic director for Clemson, made some comments where he said that in order for Clemson to remain in, and this is a paraphrase, not a quote. I'll pull the actual quote for you here in just a minute. But in a paraphrase way, he said, if Clemson is going to survive, and I read that as remain in the Atlantic Coast Conference, then the ACC will eventually have to shift to an unequal distribution model. That is to say, you get back a larger percentage of what you put in if you are one of the top tier and more profitable programs. Now, in the Atlantic Coast Conference, the programs that would likely argue for this are Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina. Then, earlier this week, the athletic director for Florida State University went on and echoed that sentiment. AD Michael Alford said in front of a board of trustees that, quote, something has to change because we cannot compete nationally being $30 million behind every year. It's not 1 year. We're talking $30 million compounded year after year. The issue here is that when the new respective television contracts for the Big Ten in 2023 and the SEC in 2024 go into effect, the Big Ten and the Southeastern Conference will both be making about $30 million annually more than the Atlantic Coast Conference. With an equal distribution model, that means that every school will be at about $2.5 million worth of disadvantage to the schools in the Big Ten and the Southeastern Conference. Florida State and Clemson have, over the past 5 days, seen both of their athletic directors go out and make the argument that they need to move to an unequal distribution model so that the most successful programs within the ACC can keep doing what they're doing. The direct analogy to this is comparing it to me to like an NBA team, right? And we talked yesterday about Damian Lillard quite a bit, right? And we talked about how Dame Lillard is not being helped out by the Portland Trailblazers. They continue every time another all-star emerges to ship them out of town and to end up building mediocre teams around a guy who, if put into the right context, I think would be elevated into the discussion of guys like Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. And we had a commenter pop into the stream yesterday and say that, yeah, but you got to keep in mind, like, Damian Lillard's contract makes it tough for the Blazers to do that. Now, there's an argument against that predominantly the fact that the Blazers are one of the few teams that seem to be unwilling to go into luxury tax spending in order to build the most successful possible team around Dame. But I have said also, the trade-off for me there is, if Damian Lillard is going to continue to operate on an unsuccessful NBA team that barely scrapes into the playoffs and gets bounced in the first round repeatedly, while being a guy that is getting you routinely triple doubles, and the only reason the Trailblazers are even worth mentioning by and large, you got to pay the man, right? If you want him to continue to mire in mediocrity and drag your carcass into the playoffs every year when you refuse to add any meat to the bones, then yeah, you're going to have to pay the guy. Well, that's kind of what we are talking about here with the Atlantic Coast Conference. Clemson and Florida State, to a slightly lesser degree, Miami, North Carolina, and I might, though I do it hesitantly, add Duke into that mix, continue to drag the Georgia Techs and the Wake Forests into some level of relevancy. And so both the athletic directors at Clemson and Florida State have now publicly come out and said, look, here's the deal. You're either going to pay us, the ones who are doing the work to keep you relevant, more money than you are paying the schools who are not helping you stay relevant, or ... Now, a part of this discussion seems to me like Clemson and Florida State are going ahead and angling themselves to make a push to get out of the ACC. We have heard rumors, discussions, report, and sources say for a while now that FSU and Clemson would likely be, if not the two first teams out of the ACC, two of the first teams out of the ACC. So why would these two schools, at such a random point in time, why would these two schools make these statements now? Why would these athletic directors speak out now when they are still locked into the grant of rights agreement signed by the ACC coming up on a decade ago and still in effect for another handful of years? And the answer is because if Clemson and Florida State were to say, truly find a buyout out of their grant of rights agreements, which they can do, if they were to come up with the money, which, if I recall correctly, is north of $100 million per school, the ACC could theoretically sue them and create litigation and string this whole thing out. It could get very ugly. But if enough of the other schools were to indicate that they were willing to leave the conference as well, then effectively it kills the ACC and the Big Ten, the SEC, perhaps the Big 12, perhaps even the Pac-12, though I find them the least likely, could start making a play at teams within the ACC. Now, that is likely a ways off. There is likely still a lot of arguing, a lot of discussions that have to go down before any of this happens. But the fact that both FSU and Clemson's athletic directors have effectively, and I'm very hesitant to use this word because it has a lot of implications that come along with it, but it feels to me like they are effectively attempting to extort or blackmail more money out of the ACC for themselves. Now, at the end of the day, college athletics is a business. You have to have net revenue. You have to have income to operate any business. I don't care how good of a heart you have behind that business. So Florida State and Clemson saying this is effectively trying, will it be successful or will it not? Who knows? But it is effectively trying to put the screws to the ACC and convince the ACC, hey, look, you either need to come up with a plan to make up the $30 million annually that we will be behind the Big Ten and the SEC out of the gate when they get their new deals, or you need to come up with a new distribution of revenue model that will make sure that at least we, the mighty few, the few in the ACC that float the boat, that we are getting paid as much as schools within the Big Ten or the SEC to justify us staying in the ACC. The problem is, I don't see that road. I don't see that ability for the ACC to be able to play the same hardball that the SEC and the Big Ten can with the brands that the SEC and the Big Ten either have or are adding in the near future. And it creates a situation. I am not going to say yet, ladies and gentlemen, that the Big Ten, or excuse me, that the ACC is doomed. I'm not going to say yet that in 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 years, the ACC will not exist anymore. I will say this. I think that the SEC will be very involved in this process. I think there are a couple of teams that they would be interested in. I do not know if Florida State and Clemson are some of them, right? By adding Clemson, you don't really add to the television market of the Southeastern Conference being wedged in between Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, etc. Florida State looks slightly more attractive in that they would basically solidify the Florida Panhandle, Southern Alabama, Southern Georgia for the Southeastern Conference. All the markets that come along with that, Pensacola, Florida, Destin, Florida, etc. All of those markets covered, by the way, inside of a, shockingly, I worked in TV in Pensacola. Pensacola, Florida, and the surrounding metro is actually a top 100 market in the U.S. It's like number 83 or number 84 in the U.S. That market would become solidly SEC, wedged between Florida, Florida State, Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Mississippi, Ole Miss, and Georgia. So I think FSU holds a little bit more attractiveness to the Southeastern Conference. Clemson may or may not, but I'll tell you who both of those schools very much would be attractive to, and that would be the Big Ten. The Big Ten has a real opportunity with Clemson and Florida State. Why? Because right now, all of this college expansion, it is all happening in the middle of a de facto turf war at this point. There is a turf war going on between the SEC and the Big Ten. If the Big Ten was able, if they see the writing on the wall, and they are able to jump in, open up negotiations, and promise FSU and Clemson the amount of money that they are looking for out of the ACC that frankly does not exist, the Big Ten could squarely plant 2 flags directly into the heart of SEC territory, and I don't know that the SEC has a fire back at the Big Ten, right? I don't think there are any Big Ten teams or really any conference teams anywhere in the middle of Big Ten country that are all that attractive to the SEC for being able to plant a flag in a big market. But if the Big Ten could get FSU and or Clemson, they would be able to plant either 1 or 2 massive flags directly in the middle of the SEC footprint. And in this turf war that's taking place, that would be a massive prize. I'm really intrigued by this.
So as far as it being blackmail, I don't think it's blackmail. I think it's public negotiation. And I think everyone understands, if they don't, then they don't know what they're doing, that Clemson is the ACC. They have the bargaining power right now. They have been 2 and 1 national championships. Without Clemson, what is the ACC? They don't exist. So either you find a way to pay Clemson, or they will end up going somewhere else. I hope they go to the Big Ten. It makes more sense as far as where they're located. And I would love to see a little more competition with Ohio State and Michigan. I think that would be kind of cool to have them in there. But the ACC is not going to exist if Clemson leaves. They're just not.
So I will say a couple of things in response to that. Then we will get y'all's thoughts, text, comments, etc., on this discussion. I think the 2 points that I would make here, Lonzo, the first is going to be that I think we collectively as fans tend to look at these situations just through the lens of football, right? Like when you say Clemson is the ACC, Clemson has absolutely been the flag banner carrier for the ACC for what? 8 years now? 7 years now for sure? Since probably, I would argue, 2015. Florida State won the title in 2013. They made a run in 2014 to try to repeat. It did not work, and then it was downhill ever since. So let's say since 2015, Clemson's been the banner carrier. There is no doubt about that. But when we are talking conference expansion, there are two other massive factors that have to be figured into this that are hard for us as fans to address, but they are arguably not just two of the factors, but two of the bigger factors that have to be considered. Let's take a break, and when we come back, I'll tell you what those two factors are and why FSU being in Clemson's corner in this discussion, I think, is actually a spark next to a powder keg that could implode the ACC and change the footprint of college football moving forward. I'll tell you what those two factors are when we come back. The great ones on the board. I am Rob Brown, and you, ladies and gentlemen, are listening to The Rob Brown Show. You're listening to The Fan Upstate.
Real sports talk for real sports fans.
The Fan Upstate
Is the sports voice of you, the Upstate fan. Call 844.
Diggs, what's up, big dog? Joseph, Kevin, T-Ray, how y'all doing, fellas? Diggs, how you living, buddy? You doing all right? Glad to see you popping in, my guy. Joe, good to have you, buddy. Thank you, man. I'm glad to hear you're doing all right, buddy. Said Butta. Butta?
Is that that a nickname? Is he Butta now?
It's a combination of bud and brother, you know? Butta. Not to bag on your team, Rob, but FSU isn't a school to hitch your wagon to. Their athletic department usually operates at a deficit, at such a deficit that any decision they make is going to be purely money-based. Well, the thing is, FSU attached their wagon to Clemson, not the other way around, right? Graham Neff said what he said before Michael Alford said what he said. I will say this. It doesn't feel like it right now because FSU has been out of the mix for so long. FSU, when they're good, and I think this is probably true, like somebody pointed out to me that there's really like three tiers of college football right now. There's the perennial teams, Ohio State, Michigan, Bama, Georgia may or may not have entered that list depending on the longevity of Kirby Smart. Etc. There's the next round of teams. These are teams that when they are good, they are on the top of the pyramid, just based on the branding, right? Like there is a part of me that read the comments of Michael Alford and I'm like, does he know it is not 1997 anymore, right? Like, does he know we're not FSU of the 90s? But if I go back to 2013, the Jimbo Fisher, Jameis Winston era, when Florida State was, and I mean, I think their national title win that year was a bit of a pleasant surprise. But when they won that title, FSU was one of the brands, right? Like when they are good, they have national attention and can bring in revenue. I'm not disagreeing that FSU by themselves, right? If just Michael Alford make this statement, we probably don't say a heck of a lot about it. But because of the fact that Graham Neff at Clemson brought it up first, and then FSU had Michael Alford come up and immediately jump into it, I think that gives it a little more oomph, because you are talking about, even if they operated a budget, arguably the two biggest brands in the ACC. I'm not saying FSU was on Clemson's level by any stretch, Alonzo, but would you disagree that Clemson and FSU are the two biggest brands in the ACC right now?
Yes, I would still say they're on different levels right now.
Sure,
but
I agree with that. Clemson is on the top. Florida State is one rung below. But when it comes to overall earning power for the ACC, Clemson is 1, FSU is 2. I would say Miami is 3.
Sides with Mark Ryan.
3 to 7 on The Fan.
Upstate.
Always streaming wherever you are on the Odyssey app. Make The Fan Upstate a favorite.
So coming out of that last segment, I told you, ladies and gentlemen, that there are 2 other factors that go into the concept of conference expansion. There are 2 other factors that conferences are considering when they look at the expansion towards the super conferences, right? The other 2 factors that are involved, the first one is, and this is one that does not get anywhere near the level of attention that I think it probably deserves in these discussions. But, and Lonzo, you should know this as well as anybody else. One thing that the Big Ten has consistently evaluated when they are adding new schools to the mix is the value of education out of the schools, the caliber of institution the actual school is, right? There are certain levels of qualifications and certifications that schools can reach, and when they reach those, they begin to bring in additional funding, whether it's opening them up for government grants, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that was considered when the Big Ten began looking out towards Pac-12 country is, do these schools have those different levels of accreditation? Do they have the qualifications that a lot of our institutions already have, right? Like Ohio State, Michigan, they all have, and I forget what the exact name of it is. I've got it somewhere in my notes. But they all reach this level of accreditation as a certain level of research school that has an air of prestige, but it also comes with income for the school itself. And they look to pair those schools up. It allows the schools to be successful as schools, which makes the football program look better as well, right? Like, at the end of the day, Lonzo, what quarterback was it that, I think it was one of your guys that said, I ain't come here to play school? Do you remember that? Was it,
I want to say, was it Braxton? I don't.
Cardale Jones.
Oh, yeah, I knew it
Cardale
was
Jones.
one of them, yeah.
Cardale Jones said, we ain't come here to play school. Well, the reality is the schools are there to play school. And some of the academic institutions that have an extended and expanded view of their actual academic qualifications will fit better when the conferences are truly looking to make that a factor. Now, I will say this. I think that the only 2 conferences that I would say are definitively going to take that as a qualification for being in their conference right now are the Big Ten and the Pac-12. I think the ACC has some level of consideration in it, but I think that ultimately the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are 2 that are making that push. In fact, we have seen some of the schools that have emerged as front runners for the Big Ten are considered highly qualified institutes of higher learning. And I think that matters. I will tell you that Tobacco Road, that is Duke, North Carolina, and I want to say Wake Forest, all three of those schools are members of the organization that the Big Ten put some favor on. So, while I have mentioned Clemson and Florida State, Lonzo and I were talking on the stream off the air, and this is why you need to come by the stream, because we have discussions off the air that we don't always have on it. And I asked Lonzo if it was fair to say that within the Atlantic Coast Conference, if we were to rank the brands, the earning potential for a conference, not competition, not how good their football team is, I am talking about ranking their earning potential. I would say Clemson is number one in the ACC right now. And then I would say Florida State is number two. I would say Miami is number three, although we cannot know for sure as a private institution. We don't have their finance numbers. And then I would say you've got a jumble of the Tobacco Road institutions that all check right in there behind that. Although there is the possibility that Carolina and Duke specifically could threaten Miami for that 3 spot. So the reason that FSU coming out and echoing the sentiments of Clemson, the reason that Michael Alford echoing the sentiments of Graham Neff is so important for the ACC to pay attention to and make a very shrewd move in response to, is that the two biggest earners within your franchise, if you will, just said, look, we got to get more cash or we out, right? Imagine being an NBA. I like coming back to this metaphor. Imagine being let's say Phoenix Suns, right? And on your team, you've got Kevin Durant, who is Clemson. You got Devin Booker, who is FSU. And you got Chris Paul, who is Miami. Now, if those three players all started to make the argument that based on the production of the Phoenix Suns, they deserve more money, and the Phoenix Suns are the ACC in this metaphor, the ACC would have to listen. Now, if Chris Paul came forward and said, I need more money, you might be like, Chris, dude, like, we love you. We appreciate what you're doing. You're certainly a factor in what's happening here, but let's not pretend like you're not replaceable, right? If Devin Booker came to the table and said, hey, look, we need more money, you'd probably consider it, right? You'd probably look at it and you'd probably go, all right, yeah, we could probably work something out. But if Kevin Durant came to the table and said, we need more money, and he was flanked by Devin Booker and Chris Paul, well, now if you're the Phoenix Suns, you have two options. Either A, you pay attention to, you respond in the affirmative to, or you just ditch the big three. You just go, you know what? You guys don't bring in, you're not doing what you think you're doing, so we're going to go ahead and pass. Good luck in your future endeavors. The problem for the ACC is that if those teams truly did decide to split, whether they buy themselves out of the grant of rights, which, and this is where it gets interesting, as we mentioned, is likely a number north of $100 million, right? If there's the conspiracy theory going around right now that a lot of this is being manufactured by a particular sports broadcasting company, right? And would they be willing to come to the table believing that adding FSU and Clemson to the SEC network would be justification, would be valued at what it would cost for them to chip in to get FSU and Clemson out of the ACC? Maybe, I don't know. I will throw on that tinfoil hat in a future episode. But what I can say about it with relative confidence here is that the ACC falling $30 million per year behind the Big Ten and the SEC, which already puts FSU and Clemson at a disadvantage. And then FSU and Clemson getting the same resources out of the ACC, $30 million behind the two big conferences involved in the land grab right now. and having to split that revenue equally with, let's say, Pittsburgh. That puts them in a tough spot. So it would make sense that they won out. And the Big Ten, as we mentioned, has a couple of things on the table here. Now, the biggest question, and I think, Lonzo, the question that we can't answer yet, but is likely the most important answer to this discussion, is what number does the Big Ten and the SEC have circled as their target number for expansion, right? We know the SEC is at 14 going to 16. We know the Big Ten is likely following in their footsteps. They are actively talking to Pac-12 teams, including USC and UCLA, who are on the way. There is discussion that they are talking with Oregon and potentially Washington to join the Big Ten as well. So what is the target number for the Big Ten? What is the target number for the SEC? If that target number was 16, then what Clemson and Florida State are saying right now is largely irrelevant. If the target number is 20, then this conversation is very relevant, but you may not be able to get the votes that you need out of the ACC member institutions to just eliminate that grant of rights, because while leaving the conference, disbanding the conference would be great for FSU and Clemson, and probably Miami, maybe North Carolina and Duke, who are looking at phone calls, blinking on their screen from the Big Ten and the SEC, maybe and probably. That's not the case for Virginia, right? That's not the case for Pittsburgh. That's not the case for Syracuse. None of those are going to be getting the same phone call. So a Virginia, a Syracuse, a Pittsburgh, they are going to fight alongside the ACC to maintain their existence, because if those moneymakers leave them in the dirt, there's no guarantee those teams will be able to field football programs moving forward. And that creates, frankly, kind of an ugly situation for those schools and those teams. That is why all of those things combined, this is interesting, because if the Big Ten is targeting 20 teams, if the SEC is targeting 20 teams, if one of them goes to 18 and the other goes, well, wait a minute, if we go to 20, we can probably still outwork them and outvalue them. The other team in this effectively cold war of conference expansion will likely match them. Well, I got news. If the Big Ten is going to 22 teams, Lonzo, well, now, in order to get Clemson and Florida State out, maybe they make a pitch to the entirety of Tobacco Road, right? Hey, Wake, NC State, UNC, and Duke. If you guys help us get rid of the ACC, all of you will be invited. We will make the Carolinas Big Ten country moving forward. And now, all of a sudden, FSU and Clemson have a few more folks switching sides coming to their corner, which could make the exit from this contract a little easier.
College football is mirroring the NFL in a lot of ways because of NIL and a lot of things like that. You ask if there's a number for the Big Ten or for the SEC. What if the number is to just make it two conferences? Suddenly it's like the AFC and the NFC, except it's the SEC and the Big Ten, and that's it. Everything comes into both. Because why do they have to have a number on it?
Oh, the only reason they would have to have a number on it is for nice round scheduling. Here are
Just think of the amount of money you could have if it was only two conferences. Think of the power that the guy over the SEC and the guy over the Big Ten will suddenly have. And more money means more chances for the smaller teams to get more of that. I think that's where it's heading. I think it's heading to just two conferences. We've talked about maybe there being a third. I don't think there's going to be a third. You're either absorbed into one of those or you don't exist, like you were talking about not being able to afford it. So the only way you're going to be able to afford a program is to be in either the SEC or the Big Ten.
Well, here's the problem. You're looking at 139 football programs, right? You can't have 260 teams super conferences.
Why can't you? Why can't you?
It is at that, scratch that. I don't think you can have two 60-team super conferences, because I think you end up in a spot where just setting a schedule becomes impossible,
Have you
right?
ever played Risk? I know you have.
I used to love Risk.
You start taking countries, and then you're like, you know what? I'll just take this one over here too, and then you take this one over here too, then you take this one over here too, because that's how you play Risk. You try to take over the whole thing. So why not? Well, we just absorbed this conference. Let's absorb another one. Why not?
Well, all right. So you said something a second ago. You said college football is becoming more like the NFL. Modern college football, and I'm not going back with you guys to the 60s and 70s, but modern college football
That was
has
a
always.
jab towards the elderly, in case you didn't catch it.
It was not. It was a jab to college football. College football in the modern era has always been like the NFL, right? It's always been at its core. This is what I've been saying and taken some caliber of flack for many years. It has always been about the money. Hey, here comes the money. Money, money, money. Yeah, it's always been that. This is not new. It's just somebody had the idea of, all right, we've done this for a while and it's working for us. What if we added more teams to the mix? Oh, there's more money. Okay, let's do that. And then other conferences went in. Now, I do think I have walked myself to the belief that you are going to end up with, as Lonzo said, I believe correctly, 3 conferences. I think you're going to end up with the SEC. I think you're going to end up with the Big Ten. And then I think you're going to end up with what I affectionately refer to as the EEC, the Everyone Else Conference, right? And here's why. Because I think for now, and this may change down the line, who knows? But I think for now, you're looking at conferences probably ballparking at like 24 teams in them, which gives you 48 teams, which means there's 150 or 100 or 90. I don't know how to count, 90-ish teams that are still out there.
That would be 96, I believe.
Beautiful math. Excellent job. That's why all my jobs are words jobs. Right there. So you end up with probably 90-ish, 96, whatever teams in college football that are not member institutions of one of the big 2. But they are not going to want to fold, right? Like if Pitt gets left out in the cold, there is a long history of Pittsburgh football, and there are Pittsburgh fans. I think what you will end up with is a Big Ten and SEC that ultimately break away from the NCAA. I think that's the end game here. And then I think you'll see the NCAA maintain control of the rest of the college football teams. And effectively, you're going to have 2 systems of college football. You're going to have major college football. That's going to be the SEC and the Big Ten, whatever iterations of those are remaining when this is all said and done. And then you'll have the other level of college football, and that's where you're going to see your Pittsburghs. I would be interested to see, because the next step in this, the first thing you're doing here, Zoe, if you're these conferences, is you're bringing in teams that you know are revenue generators. What's the next logical step if you're trying to max out revenue? To cut the teams that aren't, right? Could a Vanderbilt get cut out of the SEC and be replaced by another team that has more earning potential down the line? Possible. I don't know. We'll keep this conversation going when we come back. I'm looking for your thoughts. The text line is open at 71307. Start your text with FAN, F-A-N, FAN, F-A-N, to 71307. And we'll read a bunch of your reactions when we come back on The Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate.
Listen on your phone. Download the Odyssey app and search Upstate.
All right, stream, we will be back momentarily. Don't go anywhere. It's only gonna get better, I hope. Be right back.
Have you seen the new game on Game Pass?
Negative.
Atomic Heart?
Oh, is that on Game Pass?
Yes.
I've been bombarded with advertisements for it.
Yeah, I just saw one on TV, and I knew it was coming out, but as far as I know, it's on Game Pass. It looks pretty cool, though.
It does look cool. I don't know if you saw it. They have I much prefer the looting system in it, which is you don't have to run around and open everything in the room once you clear a room. You basically hold your hand up and just force attract all the loot to you. I can't hear you anymore. Did my batteries die?
No, it was me.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to think of the word here. My movement is sluggish. That's it. They'll get it fixed like at noon probably. So, I mean, that's how it goes. The propping the door open has helped a little. No, I just saw the advertisement on TV, and then I just looked it up, and the concept is pretty interesting. I thought it was a multiplayer, but it's not. So might have to add that to the list when I go home today, so I can review it Saturday.
Next Saturday, the 11th.
If it's the 11th, Cameron's not available.
Well, crap. Never mind.
Unless something changes, let me talk to him.
Okay.
But because the new raid comes out for Destiny 2, and he's hoping they get it done by Friday. You know, he's one of the few people in the world who does a bunch of stuff and gets rings and jackets and stuff. So, I mean,
Mucho importante.
well, the D&D is important too, but he's not sure if he'll be done yet. He's trying to gather people for the raid, and if he doesn't get enough people, then he will be available. And I hate to do that. I'll talk to him more about it tonight.
Okay. Just let me know, because if it's not that weekend, I probably won't be available for like 2 or 3 after that.
Okay.
So it would be probably
2 or 3 weekends, not 2 or 3 months.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. All right.
Upstate. 97.7 FM Greenville. 97.1 FM Spartanburg.
Always live on the free Odyssey app. CBS Sports Radio. Get in the game on the Rob Brown Show.
Only on the Fan.
The Fan.
Upstate.
So here's my question for all of you, and this is the question I was driving at, and this is the question I would like you guys to answer. You can do it by calling 844-326-3663, coming on the air with us, 844-326-3663, or you can text your response to 71307. Start your text with FAN, F-A-N. We will read them on the air. It is looking like super conferences are at this point an inevitability, right? It has pretty much been the SEC calling their shots. And on top of that, the biggest college football programs doing the same. It's been college football programs like Texas and Oklahoma saying, we want to be SEC schools. Congratulations, you are. It is teams like SC and UCLA saying, we would like to move to the Big Ten where there's more money, and the Big Ten rolling out the red carpet for them. Then you have the conferences themselves that at this point don't even really have to recruit the biggest college football franchises anymore. They're pretty much doing it themselves. I think Clemson and Florida State have basically together just laid the groundwork for their future exit from the Atlantic Coast Conference. Their grant of rights, if I recall correctly off the top of my head, ends in 2025, right? So they basically, or 26. They've got 2 or 3 more years locked in where they are, unless they either come up with the buyout money, which is a lot of money, or they get enough votes within the ACC itself to terminate the contract. That might require the Big Ten and the SEC to make an offer to a school or two that they wouldn't otherwise do so, but it might be worth it to add UNC, Duke, Florida State, Miami, Clemson. My question is this. As I was looking through yesterday evening, some of the comments, concerns, and considerations of fans on, granted, message boards where the worst and the loudest tend to populate the most conversation, I saw the comments, I hate what college football has become. I miss late 90s, early 2000s college football. If we go super conferences, I'm out, right? Now, I don't believe any of those people, with all due respect. I think like most things in this country, we thrive on knee-jerk reactions. That's why Twitter is so popular, because it is the best way to just voice your knee-jerk reaction. I myself have been very guilty multiple times of voicing a knee-jerk reaction and then coming back 2 or 3 days later and going, okay, with some afterthought, I've been able to clarify my position a little bit, and I don't feel the way that I initially did. But this one feels like a pretty prominent knee-jerk reaction from a lot of college football fans. And my question is, how many of y'all feel the same way? How many of you guys are in a spot where you're thinking to yourself, I'm out, I'm done. If this is the direction of college football, it's not for me anymore. And would you walk away, right? Is there a trigger line where you go, if college football does X, I am no longer a fan, I will be out? What is your overall reaction to everything that is going on? I want your text at 71307. Start your text with the word fan. We'll check in on a few when we come back. I want you on the air. 844-326-3663. We're back after this on the Rob Brown Show. We're back after this on the Fan Upstate.
New to the Upstate. Hey, it's DA. Wake up with a morning jolt.
Fair enough, Hudson. Fair enough. Is it me, or am I really enjoying this Brock MVP segment right now?
It's not bad.
I would like, so I think I've told you this before. We had I had a conversation a while back with a buddy of mine who's a wrestling fan. And I'll throw this challenge out to everybody. We'll make this a stream topic. If you were a professional wrestler in 100% control of your own creative, what would your gimmick be, right? And my thought has always been, I would be a professional wrestler who was a fan turned wrestler. Like, I know all of the wrestling tropes that the actors portraying wrestlers fall into, right? I would be a wrestling fan who knows how wrestling works. and is capable of like seeing the writing on the wall when things are happening, right? When another wrestler's music hits in the middle of one of my matches for a run out, I'm not the guy that would walk over to the ropes and just stare at the entrance ramp, right? I'm the guy that would immediately turn around and face the back of the ring because that's always where run-ins come from. At the Royal Rumble, I would be the first wrestler who, the first in a while, who runs out to the ring and just doesn't get into the ring until there's only one guy left, right? Like, I would be a wrestling fan who knows all the tropes. But perchance my favorite thing is when they go through the business side of wrestling, right? Like Brock demanding MVP sell the hype for the fight as if it is a genuine pay-per-view matchup. That's the kind of wrestling I'm here for. Like, give me I'm not saying it has to be all this all the time, but give me a little glimpse into the reality of the show. One of my favorite comedies of all time is 30 Rock. I love 30 Rock. And I love 30 Rock because it is a parody of television on television. And they have all the old dumb TV tropes in there, and it's just comedy gold. You and me both, Trey. You and me both.
See, I think an opportunity is missed. I think someone needs to be a sports talk host who on the weekend walks in and starts wrestling. I just think that hasn't really been done. Actually have a radio show and then go out and wrestle.
I mean, Pat McAfee's kind of doing that.
Rumors are he's done with WWE, but yeah.
Man, check this out. Your unofficial Rob Brown
we can hear it right now.
Represents being real. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted you to know. And I didn't know how else to communicate that.
State.
And away we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Our numero dos of the Rob Brown Show starts right now. What's happening, everybody? How y'all doing? Great to be with you. I am Rob Brown. The great one, Lonzo, is back in the palatial Radio Ranch. I got one more day working from home. I got good news. Well, it's good news for Lonzo primarily. Everybody else probably couldn't care all that much, but we'll be back on site tomorrow as I have acquired transportation as of today, fortunately. Got the rental car coming for question mark length of time as I wait to find out exactly what the next rig is going to be. We will find out. But back into the Radio Ranch tomorrow, much to the pleasure of one Lonzo, who will no longer have to deal with the technology required and the effort required to get me sounding as good as I do.
Especially in a hot room, although the room might be hotter tomorrow with Rob back. I mean, that's,
I am going to go ahead and tell you, Zoe, if I come back tomorrow and it is that hot in that room, it may be a one-day return.
They're here.
Okay, excellent.
Yes, they've
excellent.
Been in the room. I haven't heard them on the roof, which you shouldn't be able to, but you can. But I heard the door opening. I think they're up there working on it. So as I predict, I think it will be fixed by noon.
I will go ahead and tell you that there is
People
there's a
don't
lot.
understand. We're not complaining. I know it sounds like I'm complaining because I've worked out in the actual heat before. But there's something different about the heat that comes off these consoles and everything when there's no air moving around. It's very stagnant. If you've ever been outside on a day where there's no breeze and it's just like, everything just feels like it's weighing you down. That's how it is. But we persevere, we move on. I think there's an important question though. And I know you don't need to, I don't want you to give out the brand and you wouldn't anyway, but are we going luxury car? Are we going sports car? Are we,
Let me tell you,
what are we doing?
Can I tell you real quick how this conversation went yesterday? So, and I honestly don't know how to take it. All right. So I have been going through, dealing with the insurance. Like yesterday when we got off the show at 12:15, I was on the phone with my insurance company for like an hour. Then I had to get on the phone with the other guy's insurance company for like an hour. Then I had to go back to mine. Then I had to go back to theirs. Then I ended up having to get on with the towing company that has my car, the towing company that's getting my car to bring it to the insurance adjuster. Had to talk to the adjuster. Had to talk to some body shops about getting estimates. I had to talk to this guy, that guy, this guy, that guy. I mean, I was on the phone quite literally yesterday from 12:15 until about 4:45 in the afternoon. But the last two calls were to that guy, the guy that caused the accident's insurance company, and to the rental car, because his insurance is paying for my rental car until I get my car fixed or replaced. Yeah. And so I'm on the phone with the lady from his insurance is like, all right, call this rental car company. They're, a mile away from you. They'll have your car reservation for tomorrow. Call and hook it up. And I'm like, great. So I called the rental car company and I'm talking to the lady who is very, very nice. And we get about 7 minutes into the conversation. She gets all my information and then the phone goes silent for a second, Lonzo. And she says, Mr. Brown, I hope this doesn't come across as rude. But you sound like a larger gentleman. Am I correct in that? And I was like, ma'am.
Oh,
ma'am.
Welcome to my world. How can you tell if someone's a larger gentleman by their voice?
I don't know.
That is so I've been offended by that so much.
The thing is, she's absolutely correct. Like, I don't know how. Like, I want to be offended by it, but she's spot on correct, right?
Yeah, but how can you ask that question in this age?
Well,
in
here's
2023, how can you do that and get away with it?
I am absolutely gonna fight to prevent this young woman from being canceled, and here's why. Okay, she said, I don't know how to say this. She's like, I don't mean to be rude, but you sound like a larger guy. Is that correct? And I was like, I mean, yeah, I'm a big boy. And she kind of laughs for a second. She's like, I'm really, really sorry. I don't mean for that to be rude, but I asked for a question. I asked for a reason. And I said, okay. And she said, the rental car reservation that they put you down for is for a small, compact car.
Oh, please.
Yeah. And I was like, oh. I was like, how small are we talking here?
Please
and she goes,
please let it be a Hyundai.
She goes, like a Kia Soul? All right, now, I don't know if you've seen a Kia Soul, Lonzo, and this is not being disrespectful to any Kia Soul drivers out there. Because they seem like great cars. My understanding
they're
is
usually soccer moms and that type.
They get great gas mileage for being as small as they are. They've got good room for luggage in the back, whatever. The only problem is I feel like with a Kia Soul, Lonzo, if I gave a good running start and a European uppercut to it, I feel like I could roll a Kia Soul myself. That's how small they are. And my 6'3", now down to 254 pounds, by the way, rear end, would rock that car myself. Like, I feel like if I sit in it, it's going to be leaning to the left when I drive down the interstate, right? So she goes, I'm only asking because the reservation they gave you was putting you in a small compact. I said, how small? She said, think about like a Kia Soul. And I was like, oh yeah, no, that's not going to work. And she goes, yeah, I just wanted to double check. She goes, but here's what you can do. She said, I need you to call back the other guy's insurance company and ask them to match in your rental car, to match as close as they can to what your car is, which was a small to mid-size SUV. She goes, ordinarily they'll do that. She goes, just be polite, and most of the time they'll hook you up. And I'm like, all right, appreciate the advice. So then I call the other lady, right? I call the old or his insurance company, and I speak to another very nice young lady. And I have recently decided to take the Ted Lasso approach to life, right? I'm just gonna be in a good mood. I'm never gonna let anything ruin a good mood to the best of my ability. So,
wow, such a departure from the norm there. I don't know if I can take it.
I remain realistic, but I also elect to be in a good mood. So I call the lady, and she picks up the phone, and she goes through her spiel. I'm here to provide you with excellent service. And I'm like, well, I'm really glad. I have a question for you, young lady. And she laughs, and she goes, what can I help you with? And I said, I'm looking at my rental car reservation right now. I said, I have a random question for you, and I want an honest answer. Can you promise me for an honest answer? And she goes, if I'm allowed to give you the answer, absolutely. And I said, great. I said, do I sound like a large fella to you? She said yes. She said yes.
You asked her to be honest. I mean, you know.
I did, and she was. So the first lady says, you sound like a large fellow, to which I said, offended, but it's true.
What's a skinny guy sound like?
I don't know. I don't know what I am a sturdy individual, and I don't know what a sturdy guy sounds like, all right? Now, I will even go so far as to say, I have been accused by the lady friend, and Lonzo, I don't know if you can confirm this or not. I'm going to guess you will. I have been accused of the lady friend of having a different professional phone voice than how I talk most of the time, which is how I'm talking right now.
Yeah, we've had this discussion before. You have 3 or 4 voices for sure.
And so ordinarily, my professional phone voice is going to be more like, this is Rob Brown. Thanks for calling. How can I help you? Is there anything I can do to make your day easier today?
Yes,
right?
That's call center Rob. Yes, for sure.
That's professional radio voice, Rob. I spoke to the first time that I talked to the lady, and she answers the phone. I'm like, yes, ma'am. This is Robert Brown. I was involved in an accident on Saturday, February 25th. That damaged my Jeep Patriot. There is a claim number, blah, 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 blah. Just looking to see if I could get any updates on where we are in the process of either fixing or repairing my car. Second time I called the lady, I'm like, hey, this is Rob Brown. Hi, can I get a rental car, right? So she goes, well, when I talked to you on the phone earlier, you sounded, I'm not trying to be rude, but you sounded like a larger guy. She's like, now, not so much, but like, you've definitely got like a lot of charisma. What?
All right, so fat guys are well spoken? Is that how that works?
I don't know. So I said, honestly, do I sound sturdy? And she said, haha, yes, you do. And I said, well, I'm glad you said that. I said, I just spoke with the rental car people, and they told me that you guys had me in a small car, like a Kia Soul. And she pulls up the reservation. She's like, oh, yeah, we do. I said, well, respectfully, I go 6'3", 255, and I'm pretty sure that while I don't have any medical claims on me right now, if you jam my gigantic rear end to a Kia Soul, you might be paying for knee replacement surgery after I get out of it. And she's like, okay, you're right. Let me upgrade you. So while we're upgrading, and she's like going through the process of upgrading my rental to put me in a not that, she goes, I hope I didn't offend you earlier. What I meant was there was like a lot of bass in your voice. Like you just sound like an intimidating guy. And I was like, ma'am, can I give you a piece of advice? From now on, instead of saying, you sound like a large guy, you should lead with, you sound like an intimidating guy. That would make me feel so much better about my life. And she responded by saying nothing for 6 seconds and then going, Okay, I've managed to update your rental. You're going to be in a small to mid-size SUV now. I don't know why it made my day, but it made my day.
Well, you've been present when people have said things to me like, you sound like a Muppet, or your name sounds like a Muppet. You sound fat on the radio has always bothered me because, yeah, my weight's been up and down, and I've been fairly skinny, and I still apparently sound fat on the radio, and I don't know what that sounds like.
All right,
I mean,
I'm gonna.
There's a guy in the building that's Fat Boy, so maybe that's how you if you have the voice like Fat Boy, then maybe that's what it is.
I am gonna do something that I've done a couple of times in the past. I think I've only done it once since I've been here. Now, this is kind of tough to do because between the stream and multiple social media accounts and Lonzo and I being live on the air like 29 hours a week, by this point, and with working jobs with local sports teams, etc., by this point, most of you guys have seen Lonzo and I either on the internet or in person, right? We've put out plenty of content. Most of you probably know at this point what we look like in person. So, for those of you that have not physically seen Lonzo and I yet, what do you think that we look like? Like, just based on our voices and our characters, what do you think that we look at? For those of you that have seen us in person, what did you think we look like before you saw us for the first time, right? Like when I showed up for my audition, when I showed up for my first handful of shows, which I think like next week is my 3-year anniversary. When I showed up for my first handful of shows, before you saw me in person, what did you think I looked like? The first time that you heard Lonzo's voice, before you saw him in person, what did you think that we look like? Text us your answer to 71307, 71307. Start your text with FAN, F-A-N, F-A-N, and we'll read them on the air. What did you think before you saw Lonzo and I for the first time? What did you think we look like based on our voices? The very first text that comes in, quote, total lard asses, end quote. So we sound like fat guys. I don't know what that means, but apparently it's true.
I am also curious, what do people who say you sound like a fat guy, what do you consider fat? I mean, do you look at yourself and go, anyone bigger than me, they're fat? Or anyone the same size as me, because I am fat, well, they're fat too? I just, so if you're like 5'9" and weigh like 130, everybody's fat to you.
I will start by saying that as one of the greatest philosophers of all time, the great, legendary Weird Al Yankovic once said, I'm fat, you know it. So I've done this in the past. Lonzo, and the not consensus, but primary answer that I get to this when I've done this in the past has been, Rob, I thought you sounded like a short, fat, bald guy. Apparently, I sound like Paul Heyman. That's the response I traditionally get. More often than not, when I get people talking to me about this, the first time I meet them in person, more often than not, I end up getting something like, oh, you're a lot taller than I suspected. Oh, I thought you're going to be a short, fat, bald guy. Almost inevitably. Here are some of the texts we've got in so far. Luke says, Rob, you look just like what I imagined you would. Another texter has sent us multiple texts. One said, you look like if y'all cut yourselves, gravy would come out. We got another texter that says, Lonzo sounds like the comic store owner from Fanboy and Chum Chum. Do you know what that is?
No, but okay.
Texter says, I thought Lonzo sounded like he looked like Coach Beard from Ted Lasso. That's a compliment, all right? That's a compliment. Coach Beard is one of my favorite television characters in a very long time. Another texter says, Rob, I think you guys sound like you sweat bacon grease, end quote. I mean, I got to tell you, if Flattery won championships, you guys would just be rolling in hardware right now.
I was going to say, I want to point out that my sweat is crispy bacon grease and Rob's is flabby bacon grease.
Floppy, not flabby.
Oh,
I am
my
flabby.
fault.
The bacon is not. All right, let's take a break. When we come back here in a minute, let's jump back into the sports bandwagon. I still want y'all's thoughts on college football's future, right? Clemson and Florida State have both had their athletic directors over the past 5 days come out and say that the ACC, if they are going to survive, is going to need to switch their revenue distribution model, and obviously to a new method that favors those two programs. That makes me believe it is a strong arm move towards pushing themselves out of the ACC and into the Big Ten or the SEC. I feel like super conferences are at this point and now officially inevitable. I think Clemson will not be an ACC member by the end of the 2020s. I feel the same way about FSU. If that's the direction they go in, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings on that? When we come back, the Bears are reportedly interested in trading the number 1 overall pick, not keeping it and getting Jalen Carter. Are we in, Panthers fans? We'll address that next on the Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate.
This is the Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate.
We'll be back. I have to go get fatter.
Mark Ryan tells it like it is.
Coming up on a Super Tuesday episode of Offsides with Mark Ryan and Diesel, a listener on
Oh, man.
sports in the upstate that has teams ready to make a
Trey said you look healthy looking and take care of yourselves. Well,
NFL
I'm glad I tricked you, Trey.
and factor the morality of what Alabama basketball is doing or isn't.
Number one for real afternoon sports talk.
Offsides with Mark Ryan.
7 on the Fan.
Upstate.
Listen on the Odyssey app. Search the Fan Upstate.
The Rob Brown Show rolls on. This is the Fan Upstate. Rob Lonzo, you. 844-FANFOD. That's 844-326-3663. Text us at 71307, 71307. Start your text with FAN. Question going on right now. If you, what did you think Lonzo and I looked like before you saw us for the first time? I will tell you that when I asked that question in the last segment, Lonzo violently shook his head no, like this is going to be a terrible idea. And so far, he was correct. This was a bad idea. Whatever self-confidence I may have restored in myself today, you have all managed to dismantle one by one. Congratulations.
See, I have confidence in the listeners and what they were going to bring. So I took the text line down. Just took it down.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to a couple of other discussions we have not gotten a chance to get into yet. Reports were filed over the weekend, including by Adam Schefter, saying that the Chicago Bears are currently, quote, leaning toward moving the number one pick, end quote. The Bears own the top pick this year, and depending on how liberal or conservative you get with your guesstimates, there could be anywhere between 8 to 12 NFL teams that could be, at the very least, interested in acquiring a new signal caller for last year. Since 1967, the number one pick has been traded 12 times before the start of the draft. The last time it happened back in 2016 when the LA Rams moved from 15 up to 1 2 weeks before selecting Jared Goff out of Cal. It was only the second time in the past 22 seasons that the number one pick changed hands before the draft. The last time was back in 2001 when the Falcons moved from number 2 up to number 1 in order to draft Michael Vick. Ryan Poles is currently the GM of the Chicago Bears and has said that repeatedly, has said that he is looking at upgrading the Bears roster after their 3-14 season. He has also repeatedly said that they are committed to Justin Fields, who the Bears drafted number 11 overall back in 2021, and said that if the Bears were going to draft a quarterback this year, they would have to be, and I quote, blown away, end quote, by a quarterback to draft them to replace Justin Fields. Poles said, quote, we have flexibility where if there's opportunities where we can turn that into a lot of players that come in and help us, we can do that. If it's staying put or really being selective with certain people, we can do that as well. I know our expectation is that we move the needle to be more successful. We can win some of those close games and bring in guys that can impact this football team, end quote. Now, we have talked, obviously, about there being 8 to 12 teams that may make a move at quarterback. Some of those teams are teams that have a quarterback expected to be moved. The 49ers with Jimmy Garoppolo, the Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers. If they decide, or Aaron Rodgers decides to run it back one more time, they would lower that number by 1. Obviously, the Raiders in with Derek Carr out there. There is the possibility the Baltimore Ravens could be included in that group if they do decide to move on from Lamar Jackson. Any and all of those teams could end up getting into the mix. There are also some teams, as we told you last week, that we likely thought were going to stay put with what they have, but could still very well make a switch. Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys are one of the teams that are reportedly at least interested in one of the two quarterbacks. The Cowboys seem to be relatively high on one CJ Stroud out of Ohio State and could become a contender to move into that spot the Bears currently hold to bring the young man into play for the start. So, knowing what we know and knowing that there are things that we do not and cannot know, the destination of Aaron Rodgers, the availability of Lamar Jackson, the signing, the contract, the money that Derek Carr will get. Remember, we got the report last week that Derek Carr was going to be looking for a contract in the neighborhood of $35 million a year moving forward. That would make him one of the top 4 or 5 paid quarterbacks in the National Football League. That is mucho dinero for a guy that most people consider to be like a top 15, maybe just inside the top 10 quarterback. But with the signing of Deshaun Watson to the Browns, the quarterback market is incredibly, shall we say, volatile at this point in time. So knowing what we know, knowing that because the number 1 pick is for one of the two quarterbacks, right? We know that the Houston Texans are going to take whichever one of the two quarterbacks is not taken with pick number 1, either CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. Knowing what we know about the volatility of the quarterback market, knowing what we know about the contracts these quarterbacks want. Remember, I have told you, if you want Lamar, you were going to have to, at the very least, match Deshaun Watson's contract. That is a massive investment for a guy that you have to have questions about his ability to stay healthy for an entire season. I think that skepticism is very justifiable. So, knowing what we know about who is definitely available, who might be available, who's not available, and what the cost of either a contract to a free agent, the cost of a trade and the contract to a traded player, or the cost that it is going to take you to get the number 1 pick, because that's the only pick available if you want Stroud or Young, where do we sit on the order? And the conclusion I came to, and Lonzo and I addressed this very briefly at the top of the last hour. The conclusion that I came to, Lonzo, is this. It really depends on the quarterback we're talking about, right? If we're talking about Derek Carr, I would be happy to take Derek Carr on, but probably closer to $25 than $35 million. I would like that extra 10 available to place into more talent around him. If it is Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm looking at probably $20 million and take that extra 15 and putting stuff around him. If it is Lamar Jackson, I would be willing to give Baltimore a trade package similar to what you would have to give up to CJ Stroud, and I would be willing to sign Lamar to that 5-year $250 million guaranteed contract to get him in here. I would not feel that way about Aaron Rodgers. Uh-oh! I can't hear you. I'm sure whatever you're saying is incredible, though.
Good. So I prefaced it in a way that you can't, you have no idea what I said.
I don't.
The Atlanta Falcons have released Marcus Mariota.
There you go. So
now another quarterback is on the market with the caliber of some of the guys that are already out there to throw into the mix. One Marcus Mariota, who could be listening right now, and good luck, Marcus.
Yeah, Marcus Mariota is going to be signed as a backup quarterback somewhere, guaranteed. Marcus Mariota had his crack.
How is Carr better than Marcus Mariota?
Come on, man.
What have either one of them done?
Go watch.
What has he done? What has Carr done?
One of the biggest mistakes, in my opinion, that analysts make at times is to boil an athlete down to
Wins?
What hardware do they have?
What wins? I'm not talking about hardware. I'm talking about wins, period. Were you competitive in the conference that you were in? Did you win some big games? Did you have a winning record? A good winning record, not just 1 over 500.
Derek Carr last year played in one of the best divisions that football has seen in a while, right? Do we disagree with that? The AFC West last year?
No, it was pretty good.
Okay. Marcus Mariota last year played in arguably the worst division in the history of football.
Wouldn't you say, though, that Carr played on a better team?
Slightly. Like, I honestly don't think that Las Vegas was that much better. I think he probably had better weapons to work with, but not infinitely, right? I mean,
Well, he
I
at least had one better weapon who went over there from Green Bay.
Sure, he had Devontae, which is big. When he wasn't banged up, he had Darren Waller. That's big. That's a big pickup. Yes, I would absolutely say that Derek Carr had better weapons to work with, but I would also say he did so with a much more difficult schedule to manage than Atlanta. Marcus Mariota went 5-8 this past season in the NFC South. He went 5-8. That's not great. Then he got benched because he was playing so poorly in favor of a rook who also stunk.
So did Derek Carr.
Correct. But again, I would argue.
All this love for Derek Carr, and I don't know why. I haven't understood that. I get it for Aaron Rodgers. I get it for Lamar Jackson. I get it for those guys. I even get it for Jimmy Garoppolo, but I don't get it for Carr.
Let's see. In fact, you know what? Because I'm curious, I'm going to pop into my stat comparison tool, Marcus Mariota and Derek Carr, and let's see what their numbers look like compared to each other, shall we? All right, here's the numbers. Let's see if this makes it a move. By the way, I will trade every pick we have for CJ Stroud before I take Marcus Mariota. All right, let's just make that abundantly clear. That's before I even pull up the numbers. All right. Here are the numbers. Derek Carr.
Is Marcus, really quick, Marcus Mariota better than Carson Wentz?
No.
Okay.
No. Here's the numbers. These are, do you want season numbers or do you want career numbers?
Why not both?
By the way, real quick, Hudson just hit us with hashtag Derek Carolina. That's branding, baby. That's PR at its finest. If I don't see if I don't see the Cars start putting out hashtag Derek Carolina, I'm going to be very disappointed. That's a great tag.
He just added Carolina to his teams to talk to during the combine. So,
yeah, of course.
You know, and some people are not happy about it. Some fans. I'm just saying.
I mean, I'm not particularly worried about it.
Yay, more of the same.
All right, here's the stat numbers. Derek Carr from 2014 to 2022 played 142 games, compiled a record of 63, 79, and 0. That is a win it's not a great win percentage. It's around 48-ish%. Marcus Mariota from 2015 to 2022 has played in 87 games. He is 34, 40, and 0. So the win percentages are similar to each other. In that time, Derek Carr has completed 4,958 attempts. He has completed 3,201 for a completion percentage of 64.6%. Marcus Mariota has completed 1,312 of 2,095 attempts. So he's attempted roughly 2,900 fewer passes in his career. His completion percentage is a full 2 points lower at 62.6%. Derek Carr has gone for 35,222 yards and 217 touchdowns. Marcus Mariota, 20,000 fewer yards at 15,656 and 92 touchdowns. So he's shy of Derek Carr's match by 150-ish touchdowns or so. Let's see here. The interception numbers, 99 for Carr, 54 for Mariota. And just about every other number that you might care about skews, although slightly, towards Derek Carr.
I will say that coming into this question, someone made it sound like Derek Carr was far and away a better quarterback, and then you just compared the stats, and Derek Carr is slightly better than Marcus Mariota, who you have repeatedly disparaged.
I would disagree with that. Derek Carr has been. James just
Yes,
said
it is.
this
Exactly. That's my point. Thank you.
James just said this is a giant mid-off. Derek Carr, and I guess the part of this is one of those times that Rob Brown is going to be the haughty intellectual for just a moment and say that if you are having this conversation without,
we're gonna have the winning percentage argument again.
if you are having this conversation without the nuance of cost, then you're wasting the time of the conversation, right? Because it is not just about what QB is better, it's also about what it cost you to get each one, which is why I've said, if it's Derek Carr at his requested $35 million a year, I'm not really super interested. But if I can get him at $25 million a year, I am much more interested in Derek Carr as a bridge quarterback. Why? Because the Carolina Panthers have the opportunity to subscribe to the Kansas City Chiefs philosophy. That is to say, to save money at a lot of spots by drafting well and drafting thoroughly and drafting deeply, and then taking the money you have saved by having a very young rookie-built team and acquiring 5 or 6 excellent Pro Bowl caliber talents and giving them a majority of your salary cap. I think that methodology has worked out very well in Kansas City, and the Panthers have all the tools to follow that methodology, and they, as Lonzo has pointed out many times, have really drafted well over the years. It's not been a lack of draft talent that has been a thorn in the side for the Carolina Panthers. So the conversation is not just whose numbers are better, which, by the way, Derek Carr's are not only better, but with one more season than Marcus Mariota, Derek Carr has played in like 80 more games, thrown 20,000 more passes, has a better completion percentage, has a higher percentage of touchdown to pass attempts in that ratio, etc.
All that, and he still got benched.
He got benched because the Raiders were out of it and knew that they were getting rid of Derek Carr for salary cap and personality reasons, right? Which, frankly, Derek Carr's not in the wrong for what happened in Vegas. So, all of that being put together, I think the conversation has to revolve around price of investment in quarterback. $35 million a year, I got no interest in Derek Carr. $25 million a year, $20 million a year, $22, $23 million a year. I absolutely have interest in Derek Carr. If it's $35 million and Jackson, Rodgers, and Garoppolo are not available, then yes, I join Lonzo on the sell the farm and get CJ bandwagon.
Which would be cheaper, right?
Financially, yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Financially cheaper. But I also want you to think about it from the perspective of how many other positions can you not find a solution for or an upgrade for to only upgrade the quarterback in its stead, right? How many great linebackers, if we're moving to a 3 to 4, might we pass on? Cornerbacks, etc. All right, we'll talk more about it as we move on and get away from the, quote, giant mid-off, end quote. Let's take a break. We're back after this to wrap up hour number 2 with the Rob Brown Show. This is the Fan Upstate.
Upstate.
The sports voice of you, the Upstate Fan.
be right back in 30 seconds, guys. Don't go anywhere. Oh, I can't unmute us. Oh, I can't unmute you. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I got the NFL Network on the Combine right now, and they have two different teams of two guys covering the Combine at two different but identical desks that are next to each other. Like the two desks are next to each other. They're both identical. They both have two men at it, but they're going split screen to put all four of them on the cam at the same time. That
Sounds like fun.
Seems like a lot of extra unnecessary work.
Starter set now. That's a 5-way.
It sounds like a lot of fun. You know,
Just $3 for free shipping. Backed by our quality
I mean, you know, I would reach over and shove one of the other guys.
Oh,
on
I
the
would,
other
I would
desk.
absolutely
Yeah.
start talking at one desk and then walk mid-sentence over to the other desk.
Want to start getting conversational in another language? In as short as 3 weeks, Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons were designed by language experts to be the most efficient and effective way to learn a new language. ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas? Babbel, language for life.
1 minute.
Subscription sold. Now try
1 single minute.
Kuiper has Will Levis going to Carolina at 5.
Okay, at 5.
Yes. If they're going to trade up to 5, I guess.
You know what? That actually kind of starts to make sense with.
And he's
Atlanta.
got Seattle picking at 9 and taking Anthony Richardson.
Upstate. 97.7 FM Greenville. 97.1 FM Spartanburg.
Always live on the Free Odyssey app. CBS Sports Radio. More than the scores. Real sports talk for real sports fans.
The Rob Brown Show. Now 9 to noon. The Fan. Upstate.
The Rob Brown Show on your radio. It is the Fan Upstate. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So glad to have you. Let me welcome in here to wrap up this hour, a friend of mine on and off the air. He is the executive director of the First Tee of the Upstate, Mr. Michael Pius, joining us here on the program because there's a really good opportunity for you, the listeners of the Rob Brown Show, the Rob Brown Show Armada, to end up getting one of the greatest prize packs I have ever seen given away. Mike, what's up, big fella? How we doing?
Hey, Rob. Thanks again for having me on. Yeah, looking forward to to draw in a listener's name tomorrow at noon.
Yeah, I
for
am
our
too,
golf
because
trip out
I've
to
pretty
Pebble
much mandated at this point that if one of them wins it, I have to be one of their guesses as their agent primarily. Mike, I think that's only fair.
Beach. Yeah, and I think I make a good travel buddy too, so I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yes, indeed. If you win the raffle for a trip out to play Pebble Beach Spyglass, your other two traveling buddies do not have to be, but can be Michael Pius and Rob Brown. Mike, you guys, I believe, if I recall correctly, today is the deadline for people to go ahead and get in there, get entered for the opportunity to win an incredible prize pack.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. We got the drawing tomorrow at noon. We'll probably shut off the ticket sales around 10 a.m. Just to make sure that we got everything in order for the drawing. But yeah, ticket sales are going really well. I think we're at just under 400 right now. We're going to cap it at 500. And for those that don't know, it is 3 rounds of golf for 4 golfers, Pebble Beach, Spyglass, and TPC Harding Park. 3-night stay this year. We've in the past done just 2 nights, so we're up in that 1 night at the lodge at Pebble Beach. So you literally roll out of bed and you're on the 18th fairway, and then up to $2,000 in air transportation. So, and then for some crazy reason, if one of your listeners isn't a golfer and just wants to win some cash, they can turn the trip into $5,000 if they'd like. We also have a second place prize, which is foursomes at Carolina Country Club in Spartanburg and Cross Creek in Seneca, which are 2 great clubs here in the upstate. And then third place is a swing evaluation and 5 lessons at Golf Tech in Greenville here on Pelham Road, just down the road from our office. So a really good raffle. It really helps to raise some funds here at the beginning of the year because our registration is on fire right now with our programming. We have a number of classes that have a wait list, and actually the wait list has a wait list. So, our program is going really well. We're excited about the spring. The weather today is phenomenal. So, it just gets you in the mood to want to go out and tee it up at Pebble. So,
I mean, I already do anyway. But now
Yeah.
you can if you win this. And again, it benefits the first tee of the upstate. And for those of you that are unaware, I've obviously been talking about and been involved with First Tee of the Upstate pretty much since I moved here. It is an incredible charity, an incredible organization that utilizes golf not just as a great game, but as a game to teach kids who would likely otherwise not have access to the game, which, if we're being honest with each other, can be a very difficult game to get access to, gives them access to the game, not just to learn the game itself, but also life lessons through it, and help them become better members of society, which, Mike, has always been a reason that I love what First Tee does, not just here in the upstate, really across the country, but obviously specifically for the kids in our community.
Yeah, I mean, we're a local nonprofit. I mean, those that are golf fans and watch, the PGA Tour on TV, they see the commercials. We're an international nonprofit, but we're a local one right here. The upstate, all the money that we raise here stays here, goes into our school program, which, we see, over 60,000 kids each year. We're per capita one of the largest in the country when it comes to our school program. We're in every single elementary school in Cherokee County, Spartanburg County, all but 6 in Greenville. All 11 elementary schools in District 5 in Anderson, and we're expanding. So this year, hopefully, we'll add a few more schools in Greenwood and down and over in Oconee County. So, those listeners that are interested in supporting us, we'd love to have you, get on board and sell us out here. The last 100 tickets that we're trying to sell here for the golf trip raffle. This time last year, I think we had sold about 360 or so, and we capped it at 400. This year, we're capping it at 5. And so we're excited. We're excited about the future of our chapter, expanding into these new counties and partnering with some more golf clubs. Those that are kind of over in the Clemson area and down in the Greenwood area, we added 2 new golf courses this spring. The Fort Club, which is in 96 by Greenwood, And then also Cross Creek Country Club, which is a completely private club, has opened up their doors to us. And again, kind of breaking down that barrier and allowing kids access to the game that wouldn't typically have access. So we're excited about the future of our chapter, and we're trying to, raise some funds so that we can hire more staff and more coaches to keep impacting the lives of these young kids and showing them and guiding them down the correct path and giving them these life skills that will carry on for the rest of their lives, on and off the golf course.
Love it. Real quick, Mike, 30 seconds. How can people get entered to win this incredible prize?
Sure. Go onto our website, firstteeupstate.org. You'll scroll down a little bit. You'll see the golf trip raffle link there, or you can go directly to firstteeupstate.org /2023 golf trip. Also, jump on our Facebook and Instagram pages. Follow us, like us there, Twitter, LinkedIn. We will be live at about noon tomorrow, giving all of our listeners like an update on what we're doing programming wise, and then we're going to pull the tickets for the winners.
Beautiful.
And exciting.
Michael Pius is the executive director of the First Tee of the Upstate. Make sure you get entered for that. And yes, you may take me with you. I will take a couple days of work off to go. Mike, you are the best, buddy. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. And next time we talk, it'll be about success.
Yeah, love it. Thanks.
You got it. You got it. That is Michael Pius, executive director, First Tee of the Upstate. Get yourself registered to win that prize pack. We are back after this with the final hour of the Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate.
Hey, Greenville, Spartanburg. It's March Madness.
Catch March.
Come here. Come here. Remy dog. Josh, we are in the season I have been informed is false spring. I've been informed that there is a false spring that gets your hopes up that things are about to be nice, and then it just doesn't do that.
Yeah, speaking of pollen, I walked out and my car is covered in it. It's like, oh, joy. I'm just kind of getting over this stuff, and now I get to jump back in.
The Bradford pear trees have bloomed in my front yard. Last year, I recall very vividly at one point that there was so many leaves and so much pollen coming out of those trees at one point that I filmed it through the window because it quite legitimately and genuinely look like snow. It's very obnoxious.
Yeah, Rob, but it's pretty.
I mean, they are really pretty trees. I'm not taking away from that. But I told the lady friend the other day that if there is a way to get rid of the Bradford trees, if that program is legit, I would have the city come take these two out, and I would put 2 Southern Magnolias in the front yard immediately.
I'm sure it would enhance the beauty, not take away from it.
State Fan. CBS Sports Radio. Always live on the Free Odyssey app. This is the Rob Brown Show. Get Rob. Only on
The Fan Upstate.
The third, the final, the best, the money hour of the Rob Brown Show starts now. This is the Fan Upstate. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Rob and Lonzo and you here on the Fan Upstate. So glad to have you. We appreciate your time each and every day. To the noobs in the audience, we welcome you specifically. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for joining us here on the broadcast. I had a thought, Lonzo, during the break. It's actually shockingly sports related for the first time. I had a thought during the break. We were talking earlier in the show about the common phrases, about the common statements, I should say, that were released by both the athletic director of the University or I guess Clemson University and Florida State University. Last week, Graham Neff, AD at Clemson, put out a statement saying that the ACC would have to switch to an unequal revenue distribution model in order for the top teams to be able to succeed and carry the banner of the ACC. That sentiment was echoed earlier this week when the athletic director at Florida State University, Michael Alford, basically said the exact same thing. And we had a discussion about the future of college football. We had a discussion about what I think the landscape of college football is going to end up looking like in the future. We had a discussion of what I think the world of college football is going to morph into over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years, over the next 25 years. I think super conferences are inevitable. I think we will have an SEC and a Big Ten. And then I think we'll have an EEC, and everybody else conference that effectively is just the rest of the schools trying to monetize themselves to the best way possible to stay afloat, to be able to field football teams moving forward. There were 2 thoughts that came out of that for me, though. The first one is I really kind of took a look at college athletics on its surface level, right? One of the most painful realizations I've had over the years is the recognition that college athletics at its surface is an unsustainable product, right? I mean, if we're just being honest, college athletics is an unsustainable process. The other day, I referenced, for instance, the Frozen Four. Now, that's a massive tradition amongst the NCAA programs that have a university-sponsored hockey program. College hockey's big across the North, but outside of that, not really. And then I really kind of started to dig in because I was curious, and I came to the realization that college hockey on its own is an unsustainable product. It just does not bring in enough revenue to run itself on its own. It's got to have football. It's got to have basketball. And then I kind of realized that's probably true of every single sport that's not football and basketball. The only sport that might threaten to exit that group is baseball, and that's really only at certain schools, right? So with that thought, I then kind of got into the concept of how those university athletic programs stay afloat and why this college conference expansion is taking place in the first place. And I came to the realization, Lonzo, that while it sounds gross on its surface, it is the only thing that makes this sustainable. Television is the reason we are having all of these changes, right? The reason these changes are taking place is because of television. Now, years ago, you didn't have digital outlets that carried television signals, right? Back in my day, the remote control was my dad telling me, hey, go turn it to channel 3. Go turn it to channel 5. Plug in the VCR. Like, that was the remote control. But now, I can pretty much sit here at the Casa de Love, and on any given night, I've got a laptop in front of me. I've got another laptop raised on an elevator atop of that. I've got 2 phone tablets on both sides. I've got a holder over here for my actual phone. I've got a 70-inch television to my left hooked up to an Xbox. When I want it, I've got another 40-inch TV in the other room that I can bring in here and put up above the big screen TV. I can have as many as 7 screens going in this room at any given time and have the opportunity to have all 7 of those screens airing different games. And that works exceptionally well for Saturdays in the fall, for Sundays in the fall. It works well over the next couple of weeks when I've got conference basketball tournaments lining up and taking place around the country. It works exceptionally well during the first couple of days of March Madness when I've got 4 different basketball games happening in 3 different time slots across the day. But what that translates to is advertising outlets seeing that they want to be involved in that. And they're willing to pay buku dinero to do so, which means that the future of not just college athletics, though that is our number one concern for the sake of this discussion, but sports as a whole is now more dictated by television than it is by any other outlet. Baseball 100 years ago was dictated by radio, right? It was radio that dictated what went on during a baseball broadcast. And years past, it was a television network that was most likely to be in charge of what was going on in the world of sports. Now, because of how much reach certain networks have and the fact that there are 1,000 outlets to watch, but predominantly contracts are set up to where only one provider can carry any individual athletic program, right? NBC with Notre Dame, the ACC, the SEC owned by ESPN, et cetera, and with schools now running their own networks, which can be bought and funded by those networks. So if you're a fan of, let's say, the Texas Longhorns, you can get the Longhorn Network and stay connected with only Texas sports. But the SEC is still going to be in control of that, the Crimson Tide Network, et cetera, et cetera. The goal for, let's utilize, I don't know, ESPN, for example. The goal for ESPN now is to do what? It is to get as much of that content as possible under one banner. I want as much of these content producers under my umbrella. Now, you can split them up still. You could have the Longhorn Network, the Buckeye Network over here, the Crimson Tide Network over here. You can even go one step up, the ACC Network, the SEC Network, as long as they're under the umbrella of ESPN, and ESPN has the rights to those schools. Ultimately, conference expansion is dictated by television more than anything else. And I can expand that to other sports as well. Why do you think over the past 2 years, there was this sudden, immediate knee-jerk to get these new rules into the game of baseball? The pitch clock, etc. Why do you think these new rules were so immediate? The new rules were immediate only because television networks were watching the TV audiences for Major League Baseball stagnate. And one of the biggest reasons that most viewers said that they had checked out of Major League Baseball games on television, we're still willing to go in person, we're still willing to catch highlights and game summaries and all that, was they were losing audience to digital outlets, right? Because I cannot watch the Braves v. the Padres on a Wednesday afternoon game, but what I can do is get home at 5:30. I can click on over to MLB Networks or Fox Sports, and I can watch a 2-minute highlight reel of everything that I missed. The attention span of the average American is dropped. We know that. That's why TikTok exists, right?
What?
I know. What was I talking about again? So the average television attention span has dropped down, and the only way to be able to prevent that from happening further is to decrease the amount of time and attention necessary to watch these games. Baseball has been slowly creeping up towards a 2-hour and 40-plus minute game time for just a standard 9-inning game, right? So far, we have basically 3 full days of spring training games behind us. Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. The average length of games so far through this spring training has been roughly 2 hours and 14 minutes. The pitch clock has cut almost a complete half an hour off of the game. And you've got to keep in mind that at least some of that time has been umpires deciding on rulings, umpires receiving rulings from MLB, managers and players arguing the rulings against these new rules, etc. The more we adapt these, the more they get brought into the play, the more that we face them, the fewer arguments we're going to have, the even more, the larger the decrease in total minutes played in any given game is going to come down, right? So the reason that these, and I'm not going to go way down that road, but the point is that I'm trying to make here is that the goal of these rule changes in Major League Baseball is the same reason as conference expansion in college football. Why? Because they want to do all they can to generate more viewership on the product, because more viewership on the product means more money in hand. And at the end of the day, that is the primary driver. That is the primary goal. Television is the number one mover and shaker in this entire discussion that we have been having about college football, about MLB, etc., etc., etc. I am not surprised by this. I am not shocked by this. I'd like to say I'm not disappointed in this, although I'm not entirely sure if I am one way or the next. But I think that this is obvious, right? I think this is obvious.
Will it stay this way, though? Because with digital getting bigger and bigger, like with YouTube getting NFL Sunday Ticket, are TV's days of ruling sports numbered?
No, and I think here's why. First and foremost, when the NFL adds Sunday Ticket to a new platform, they're going to track those numbers just like they track any other number, right? Like they are going to look at what the NFL America's Game of the Week on Sunday night numbers do on NBC. But if you're watching on the ticket, your eyeball is still counted in there, right? The only goal of the NFL, of the MLB, of college football, the only goal is to increase the number of eyeballs on the product at any given time. Because the more eyeballs there are on the product, the more numbers you have, the bigger revenue you can generate based on it, right? Like I'm pulling back the curtain. Any broadcast outlet, including our own, is that way. Lonzo and I have a job. Our job is to do the best show we can to continue to grow the number of earballs that are paying attention to our show. Why? So that at the end of every quarter, we get a little book that says, on average, 3 million people were listening to the Rob Brown Show at any given time. And then our salespeople take that number and they go out into the community and they go, hey, we would like to help you advertise your product to the local sports community. We'd love to have you advertise on the Rob Brown Show. And those people go, oh, it's a lot of people will be involved. That is why, and I say this sincerely, if you guys want, and how many times have I told you, you have control over what does and does not make it on the air. You have 2 ways to do it. Number 1, to engage in the product itself and tell us what you like and what you don't like. And number 2, if you hear an advertiser on this station, right, and you interact with that advertiser, make sure you go out of your way to tell them, hey, I heard about you guys on the Fan Upstate. I heard about you guys on the Rob Brown Show. I want to be a part of that. The consumers have control. The SEC, for instance, is looking at that. And part of the reason I've said that I think Clemson ends up in the Big Ten when this is all said and done is because the SEC, in trying to grow the number of eyes and ears on the product, doesn't really gain much by having Clemson join the SEC, right? Like, you got Clemson, which is not a massive television market. You've got the Upstate, but that's already in SEC country, right? But now, you would add the Clemson audience in the Upstate, but the Upstate already belongs to the SEC. They can already advertise and generate revenue from this area, courtesy of being wedged in between the University of South Carolina and your reigning, defending, undisputed national champions, the Georgia Bulldogs. Tallahassee, the Florida Panhandle, does add a flag to the SEC market. It does add more eyeballs. You finish off Pensacola, a top 90 market in the United States. You grab the entire rest of the Florida Panhandle, which is not exclusively, but predominantly garnet and gold. You add a market within the footprint that isn't entirely SEC controlled. That's not the case with Clemson. You would basically fill in a little hole that is already owned by the Southeastern Conference. So what are they trying to do by expanding? The Big Ten, for instance, coming down and grabbing Clemson and perhaps Florida State, would put more eyeballs on the product. It would allow them to get bigger, better contracts from their product. It would allow them to increase the revenue coming in from advertisers. It would allow them to increase distribution of that revenue across their schools to help their schools be more successful, even if it comes at the risk of a little bit of cannibalization within. Now, I will also tell you that I have come to the conclusion, and it may or may not be true, we'll find out. A part of the reason that we are moving to an expanded playoff, a 12-team playoff down the line, Lonzo, is because of the foresight of super conferences, right? Because if the SEC says, let's go to 20, and the Big Ten goes to 20, what are the odds that you're going to guarantee yourself 1 or 2 undefeated teams out of that conference every year? Slim to none, right? Slim to none. So the best way to ensure that you can put a Big Ten team, an SEC team, or multiple teams into the playoffs is to react to the SEC and Big Ten brownie points that they get in the rankings at the conclusion of the regular season, because there are multiple good teams within that conference, to ride that buzz and ensure that you have got the opportunity to get as many as 8 non-conference champions who are very good teams into the picture. These things all play off of each other in order to make television the number one priority of the conferences, as television is the number one money driver for the conferences as well. When you wonder why it is that college football is going this direction, when you wonder why it is the NBA is going the direction that it is going, when you wonder why it is that Major League Baseball has not just implemented the changes they've implemented, but also have done so incredibly rapidly, the answer is to make a better television product. The fans in the stadium, they're not worried about. You're already there. You've already bought the ticket. You are likely not going anywhere. It's the Robs and the Lonzos and the Kevins and the Treys and the Lukes and the Keegans at the house that are watching for whatever reason they're watching on the TV, that they are ultimately trying to talk into spending more time on the product, more money on the product, putting their eyeballs on the product for a longer period of time so they can sell more of the product to advertisers. That's all it comes down to. Lonzo, the only heavy hitter in all of these games is television.
You put all that out there and you expect me to add to that? I can't add to that.
I mean, you can just say, wow, Rob, you are absolutely brilliant, and I agree with you.
I am dumbfounded, which is not hard, but an excellent job.
Thanks. I feel better about my life. I appreciate it. Let's run to a break. When we come back, ladies and gentlemen, I got a few more things that we need to get into and get through before we call it a program. I have kicked around quite a bit. If the Panthers go draft for quarterback, which one I would prefer based on the cost-benefit analysis. Lonzo pointed out that we have a new draft mock from ESPN's own Mel Kiper, and he has Carolina selecting a quarterback at 5. But who does he have us moving up for? We'll break it down when we come back on the Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate.
Dispensing real, unfiltered sports talk every weekday.
Now 9 to noon.
This is the Rob Brown Show. The Fan.
Upstate.
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Somebody just referred to me, said I look like a Ryan Reynolds wannabe. I mean, in fairness, there are worse people I could wanna be, right?
Yeah, I don't see that. We all know the normals, the Will Wheatons, the things like that, but
I get Will Wheaton all the time.
yeah, but Ryan Reynolds, sorry, Rob, but no, I don't see it.
I mean, listen, I don't look like Ryan Reynolds. I guess there are probably some points in time that my personality is similar, I guess. I would also say Ryan Reynolds being a huge dork combo soccer fan probably puts me there, but I was doing that well before Ryan Reynolds went from doing dumb rom-coms to being actually really cool.
I really liked him in Blade 3, I think it was. Whichever one, I think is the one that Triple H was in.
I mean, I can start and end with Deadpool. The fact that when he announced the Deadpool movie, I was like, if he blows this, I'm going to be furious. But he made great Deadpool movies, and I'm on board.
Yeah, that just makes my right ear hurt because I sat next to Chris in that movie, and he laughs really loud.
Offsides with Mark Ryan.
3 to 7 on the Fan.
Upstate.
Always streaming wherever you are on the Odyssey app. Make the Fan Upstate a favorite.
The Rob Brown Show is back on your radio or your smart devices. All you got to do is tell Siri or Alexa or whatever else you utilize to play 97.1 The Fan Upstate. And she will do just that for you. You can listen to the station on your smart device around the clock. If you're in front of a laptop, a PC, a tablet, you can also either grab the Odyssey app, AUDACY, and listen live 24/7, 365, which, by the way, even on your cell phone, grab the Odyssey app because I am planning on doing our first Rob Brown Show Go Live coming up probably this weekend. As a matter of fact, a lot of good stuff coming up this weekend. We might do some combine breakdown and more, but the Odyssey Go Live, a way for me to interact very directly with you guys away from the show's normal broadcasting hours. So grab that Odyssey app and get ready for that. But you can also go to www.thefanupstate.com, www.thefanupstate.com, and click the Listen Live button and listen straight off of your computer as well. All right, so we know now that Carson Wentz is now in the quarterback carousel. We know that Marcus Mariota is now in the quarterback carousel. We are waiting to find out, likely by March 15th, if Aaron Rodgers will be in the quarterback carousel. The GM of the Packers was at the Combine today, and he said that he hopes to have at least a direction on a resolution for the Aaron Rodgers situation by the start of free agency, which is, again, March 15th. So we may have him involved. I have told you guys that I think there's a very small chance that it happens, but the Ravens may decide, instead of franchise tagging Lamar Jackson for a single year, that they might very well end up in a spot that they decide to get something back for him and put him up on the block. We will talk about that as we get closer to March 15th. But all of that being said, all of that being discussed, let's focus on the Panthers if they do decide to go the draft route, okay? Because there's really two options. You are picking between either Bryce Young and CJ Stroud at 1, or at this point, I am relatively convinced you are moving up to 5 to take Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. Now, Lonzo pointed out to me a few minutes ago that Mel Kiper Jr. has put out his most recent mock draft. And in that mock draft, if I recall correctly, Zoe, you told me that Carolina moved up to 5 and took Will Levis.
Yes, and I don't know if that means they traded with Seattle because they had Seattle picking at 9. I don't know who's the current picker at 5.
I believe right now it is Seattle, and if I recall correctly, it is Detroit after them, Atlanta after them. Regardless of what it takes to get to that spot. Right now it is Seattle via their Denver trade. This is their Russell Wilson pick. Then the Detroit Lions, as I mentioned, are at 6. The Raiders are at 7. Atlanta's at 8. And I told you, if you recall, last week, there has been a lot of discussion about, Carolina should just take whoever's available at 9. Lonzo, after number 3, every team from 4 to 8 needs a quarterback. The Indianapolis Colts need a new quarterback. The Seattle Seahawks may very well lose Geno Smith to free agency. They will need a new quarterback. The Detroit Lions do not necessarily need a new quarterback, but they have made it very clear that they would like to add one into the fold to start preparing for whenever Jared Goff ends up leaving. The Las Vegas Raiders need a new quarterback at 7, and at 8, the Atlanta Falcons, who just released Marcus Mariota, and very clearly are not happy with Desmond Ridder, need a new quarterback. The reality of this situation has now become, Zoe, you cannot stay at 9 and get a quarterback. At least not one of the 4 first-round guys. Now, any other quarterback that you take at 9 is likely going to be a guy that is considered a second-day option. So you have the option of either trading dramatically back in this draft out of 9, which there will be some value there, right? If you don't move from 9, the team that drafts number 1 overall is taking a quarterback. The team that drafts at 2 is taking a quarterback. 3 will not take a quarterback. They'll likely take Jalen Carter out of Georgia. Indy's taking a quarterback. Seattle will take a quarterback more than likely, not guaranteed, but more than likely. Detroit will take a quarterback. Vegas will take a quarterback. Atlanta takes a quarterback. Now you're at 9. There's no quarterbacks left at 9. So the only thing you can do is either A, have a Stretch Armstrong level reach backwards to a second-day guy at 9 overall, which seems like a waste, or to dramatically trade backwards and take a second-day quarterback later on in the draft. There are no second-day quarterbacks that I put into the conversation with Levis, Richardson, Stroud, or Young. There's just not. It's a massive drop-off from those 4 guys down to the next round of quarterbacks. So the only option, if you have to go quarterback in the draft, is to trade up to no worse than the number 5 spot with Seattle. And even if you want to do that, Zoe, if Seattle decides losing Geno Smith if they do lose Geno Smith to free agency, which is a possibility, that may not even be an option, right? There is a scenario here where there is no one to trade with except the Chicago Bears. So I've now walked myself into a spot, Zoe, where if you are the Panthers and you are looking to trade up, I don't know that you, and we'll have a little bit clearer picture in 17 days when free agency starts, I hope. We probably, I will say probably, though it may have to be left at May, we may not have an option but to trade up to number 1 overall if you can swing it.
Yeah, that's the thing. You either trade up to number 1 and lose a ton of picks, or you just don't draft a quarterback. Because whoever's left at 9, are they better than Matt Corral? We don't know. Probably not. Or they're of equal value and you've already got Matt Corral. So if they don't trade up to number 1, we're going to know after that number 1 pick happens. If they don't trade up to number 1, then we're going back to the same formula that they've used the last 2 or 3 times in getting a retread. And some people probably think it's a joke. It is not a joke. Trade everything, get CJ Stroud.
you may not have a choice. Now, my argument has been, as I mentioned to you guys, I'm right now back in the Ted Lasso philosophy on life. All right, and there's a line from that show that I genuinely loved. His assistant coach, Coach Beard, had dated a number of women who were all very similar to each other. He was thinking about dating another one, but he wasn't going to because he's like, okay, I've dated enough of this type of woman. I think I should probably give up on that. And Lasso says to him, all people are different people, right? You don't cast judgment on a single person because a group that they belong to has a bad image. And when you label retread quarterbacks, that's effectively what you're doing. You're being like, okay, in the past, veteran quarterbacks haven't worked out, so therefore no veteran quarterbacks are going to work out. And I don't know if that's the case or not, right? Now, again, I underline, italicize, emphasize, capitalize, and bold. I don't know if it'll work out like that. The problem that you bump into, here's the good news, bad news. The good news is that one of the bidders that you will be up against is Indianapolis. If Indianapolis trades with Chicago and moves from 4 to 1 and pushes Chicago back from 1 to 4, nothing really changes, right? Like the same amount of teams that need to draft a quarterback are ahead of you. The problem is there's like 5 teams ahead of you that need to draft a quarterback, and there's only 4 guys that are considered first-round guys. I don't know if a trade is possible to 5. I had kind of walked myself into the spot, Zoe, that I think I accept Anthony Richardson as my guy. All right? I think I accept Anthony Richardson as my guy. I think I'm comfortable with the guy who's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got the mechanics, he's got the vision, he's got everything he needs except the most important thing, accuracy, which we have talked about. But it's the draft. Every guy you bring, CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are both risk. Bryce Young is 5'10". He's the same height as Drew Brees, which is great because he's got arm strength and accuracy.
Allegedly, he's 5'10". We'll see what he actually measures at the combine.
Yes, we will. I wouldn't be shocked to see him check in at like 5'9.5", to be honest with you, right? I have concerns. Those guys are gambles too. So I think, in fact, I was even prepared to, in this segment, make an argument that I am happy with Carolina trading up to 5 to take a quarterback. I don't know if you still have that draft pulled up, Zoe. Do you remember off the top of your head who the 4 picks ahead of that were? I'm assuming Stroud and Young were both off the board at that point.
I do not. I just noticed the Panther pick. It's one of those. It flashed up on the TV, and I immediately went to the Panther pick when I saw it wasn't at 9. And then by the time I tried to go left to where the other picks were, it had already went off the screen. And I don't know if it's available on the free side of ESPN or not.
Fair enough. Let me see if I can. Pull it up because I've got the. All right, here it is. Here's what Kiper has put out in his most recent mock draft. This one dropped this AM. He's got Houston moving up 1 spot in a trade with the Bears to take a quarterback, and he's got them taking. Does he say who they? This is weird. He's got he's got them taking Bryce Young. All right, so Houston goes up to 1 to take Bryce Young. Chicago goes back to 2. Then he's got Indianapolis making the trade with Chicago to go from 4 to 2 and taking C.J. Stroud at number 2. He's got the Cardinals taking Will Anderson Jr. at 3. He's got the Bears staying at 4 and taking Jalen Carter. Then he's got Carolina making the trade up with Seattle into Denver's spot to take Will Levis out of Kentucky. Now, let me say all of this, Lonzo. I'm sitting here. I'm spinning these mock drafts through my head. I'm looking at different possible draft orders in my head. I'm coming up with who I think is going to draft who where in my head. But the reality of this situation is that we cannot know. It's tough to even freaking speculate at this point what our pick looks like until free agency, right? Because you're right. There are a number of teams ahead of us. Houston, Indianapolis, potentially Seattle, potentially Detroit, Las Vegas, and Atlanta, all of whom need quarterbacks. And the possibility is on the table that all of them could draft a quarterback. But all of those free agents have to land somewhere, right? They all have to land somewhere. So Lamar Jackson, if he's on the block, has got to land somewhere. One of the most popular potential destinations I've seen is Atlanta for Lamar Jackson. Aaron Rodgers, if he does leave Green Bay, has got to land somewhere. Now, I don't think any of the teams that we have mentioned are necessarily huge targets, except Vegas, where he could reconnect with Devontae, right? Derek Carr has got to sign somewhere. We now know, per Shefty, that Derek Carr has meetings set up at the Combine with the Jets, the Saints, and the Panthers. Those are the three teams Derek Carr is scheduled to meet with. He's got to land somewhere. Could it be in Carolina? Could it end up being with one of the teams ahead of us? I don't know. Jimmy Garoppolo has got to end somewhere. I think he would fit in very well with the Raiders. I think he'd fit in very well with Seattle, to be honest with you, if he wants to stay in division. So we can make all the speculation that we want about what the Panthers do, but the realist in me says it's a waste of speculation, Zoe, because until free agency plays out, there is no way for us to know what the landscape looks like. We are trying to plot a course from A to B without ever seeing a map.
Well, and the thing is, free agency will be here before we know it. I mean, time is flying by. It's only a few weeks away. The question is, how quickly do those pieces start moving? Will deals be done before free agency pops up? Will that day suddenly 3 or 4 of these quarterbacks be off the board? Because if so, then things start to take shape a little bit more, and especially if one of those teams ahead of the Panthers should happen to snatch up one of those quarterbacks, or if the Panthers snatches one up themselves.
Correct. I mean, listen, all of this draft talk is predicated on working under the assumption that Carolina doesn't sign Derek Carr, right? Which is a strong possibility. All of this is predicated on none of those teams that we mentioned ahead of us that are quarterback thirsty signing a free agent quarterback, or really getting hooked on one of the free agent or one of the draft possible quarterbacks themselves and making their own moves that shakes things up. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities, but the reality is, while it is absolutely my job to speculate on the draft, to give thoughts on what could end up happening in the draft, we will not be able to do that with any level of accuracy until March 15th. Hang on to your butts, kids. We got time. Lonzo, Rob, you. The Rob Brown Show is right here on the Fan Upstate.
What's cracking? It's Rome here. Playmakers, you know it. Mark Ryan.
There's the dog for those of you watching on the stream. What are you doing, puppy dog? What are you doing? That's Remy. Of course, named after Remy LeBeau, my favorite X-Man. Is it my favorite X-Man or my favorite X-Men or my favorite of the X-Men? It's got to be my favorite of the X-Men, right?
I would go favorite member of the X-Men.
Favorite member of the X. I think that's the right way to do it.
It could have been worse, James. It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, but it could have been a lot better too.
Come on now. Remember, you got to use that outlook on life and go agree with me that it could have been worse. Almost time for me to go and cool down.
Well, it's time for me to go pick up a rental car for a large man. Sorry, a guy who sounds like a large man.
Hi, I'm here for the sturdy vehicle, please. Can you confirm
For
that
me.
this vehicle is sturdy?
For me, SUV is sturdy utility vehicle.
There you go. Excuse me, since I sound so fat on the phone, are the seats reinforced? Just curious. 'Cause, you know, wouldn't want to damage the rental car.
ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Nature Valley has helped restore access to 10,000 miles of national park trails. And we're on our way to restoring even more because every mile is a new memory. Life happens out there. Nature Valley.
This afternoon, partly sunny, warm and breezy, high of 78.
Weather brought to you by Staples. Staples stores are a new world of possible. Innovative tools for small business and remote workers and holders. Explore more at your local Staples store or staplesconnect.com.
And now, the Rob Brown Show presents Twitter Trending Topics.
All right, it's time for Twitter Trending Topics, where I tell Rob what is trending, and he will tell us, all of us, every one of us, why it's trending. The first thing that is trending is Kenny Omega.
Kenny Omega. Okay, so Kenny Omega, the reports started dropping earlier this week that Kenny Omega is open-minded to the possibility about a move over to the WWE, which is fine. I genuinely don't have an issue with that. I want every that's why the AEW thing was great. Every wrestler should have the right to be able to go have some options for what is best for them. And if that's what he feels is best for him, then have at it, right? And AEW can either figure out how to move on without him or they die. It's very simple. But the debate raging on Twitter right now is a very interesting one, Lonzo. And the question is, if Kenny Omega moved over to WWE, does he debut straight to the main roster? Or does he go through NXT for a couple of months to catch up with how they do things?
Oh, come on. He goes to the main roster.
Correct response.
Yes.
There are a bunch of... This is one of the few places that, I think Lonzo and I can both say both of us want both companies to be good so that we have choices. We have options. We have different stories going at different times. But there are some WWE stans who are always going to crap on AEW and some AEW stans who are always going to crap on WWE. And they are just absolutely embroiled in the stupidest fight that has happened on Twitter since probably yesterday.
Yeah, it's pretty dumb. That's not why he's trending, though. He was on Renee Paquette's podcast today, and he addressed the brawl, and he addressed the faux explosion. And a video just popped up of showing the Eddie Kingston covering Moxley for the Sparklers.
What an incredible theatrical twist of a story that was.
And apparently I just saw the words flash across where a booker or someone told him, please, Kenny, don't do it, about going back out and addressing it. So apparently he wasn't pleased. I'm sure no one was pleased, but that's why that's trending. And I'll definitely have to check that out later on to see what he says. All right, the next thing that's trending is nudie.
I'm sorry?
Nudie. It could be nutty. It's N-U-D-Y.
You know, I don't know. And this is a problem I have about twice a week.
If you throw a little in there, then you'd know what it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay. All right. So
It's a rapper.
you did this very much on purpose. I got it. And I appreciate that. That's a hell of a troll job there. Well done.
You know what I made the mistake though? I clicked on it before I thought about it.
I mean, was there anything you regretted?
No, I was good. I was good.
Okay.
I started thinking about it after I clicked on it. I was like, yeah, let me get off of this.
About once a week, Lonzo hits me with a Twitter trending topic that I'm like, I really want to search that, but also I'm on the work computer. So,
yeah, but you're at home, still on the work computer though. But you are at home.
No. The work computer's up here on the elevator. The personal PC is down underneath it. So I got the Rob Brown show going on the work computer, which is up here where you're looking from, and then the regular laptop here. I'll even go on the stream. The regular laptop's down here. So that I can have a little versatility in my life. Great one.
Look at that. So
Now
anyway,
I'm going to make
nudie is
everybody on the
trending.
stream motion sick.
Make sure you check that out. The next thing is trending is John Wick 4.
Dude, they could make 100 John Wicks and I'll keep going. All right. Keanu's a national treasure. Listen, there comes a point in a lot of franchises, though, where it goes from let's make a great movie to like, let's just put as many dumb action tropes into a movie as we can. Every John Wick movie has been good. Right. Like Fast and Furious just got to the point where let's just keep getting more ridiculous until people say that's enough. Keanu can make John Wick 93 and I will be in the theater to see it. I love every John Wick movie. They're all as good as the last.
Although the last John Wick movie, my son and I were in there and we looked around at all the people cheering every death. And I started thinking, okay, what am I doing?
Hey, listen, they killed a puppy.
Yeah.
Once a bad guy in a movie kills a puppy, they are fair game for as gory as you want to get.
Well, I forgot all that when they walked into a glass room and it's like, oh, what are they going to do in here? I can't wait for that. So it comes out in, I believe, 2 weeks or something like that.
I'm in.
So.
I'm in. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. That's the show. Thank you guys for listening. I will be back in the James said John Wick movies like Rob's camera are a nonstop thrill ride. I will be back in studio tomorrow, so back a little bit more to our real regular day-to-day life. We appreciate you listening. Thank you all for doing so that we can do what we do. For Lonzo, I am Rob Brown. Have a lovely rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for another rousing rendition of the Rob Brown Show right here on the Fan Upstate. Later, brother.
The Rob Brown Show. Listen on your computer and tablet at thefanupstate.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for hanging out on the stream. You're the best. I'm going to go pick up a rental car and try to get back to my regular life. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.